day of the week is upon us again. That's right, Whatever Buddy Wednesday is here, along with another episode of the Whatever Buddy podcast. Today we have part 2 of our interview with Michael Goldberg. We dive deeper into the darker side of his book, The Wicked Game, the true story of guitarist James Calvin Wilsey, and we really get down to it. So, you already know the drill. Why don't you have the cold one already? Whatever, buddy. So with no further ado, Ryan and Johnny.
Hey, clap it in, part 2.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Whatever Buddy podcast. Here we are.
Yep.
This is part 2 of the Michael Goldberg interview. I just want to say, Ryan Harris, why don't you explain to us what happened last week and why we have a part 2 to begin with?
We had some technical difficulties, as you do. Whatever, dude.
Well, tell me what happened. I mean, what was the outcome of all that nonsense?
Last week, we're talking to Michael, and he wrote a book, and we're getting into it and everything, and then all of a sudden, the Zoom feed stops. So we're like, well, okay, so everyone stays on except my Zoom feed dropped. Let me be more specific. This was my issue. And so my internet went out. It was out for the rest of the day. I called my internet company, who will remain nameless. They send somebody out the next day, and the guy shows me this, dude. This is the wire going from outside to into my house, my internet wire going from the outside to inside my house. Now, it's supposed to look like one of those outdoor orange extension cords. So obviously it's faded and everything, but that silver part there is like exposed wire. So this was just outside. That was my internet source right there. And the dude comes in and gives me this. He's like, dude, I'm surprised your shit even worked at all. Like,
well, let me ask you something. How did it get like that?
It's just the original cord when they built the house, I guess, and, just got beaten down by weather.
All right. I ended the last episode by saying that I lost my jewel pod, but don't worry, I'll get more. I said that at the end. Let me tell you my pet peeve this morning. I don't have more jewel pods because the reality of it is I went to 7-Eleven and I see a lot of 7-Elevens, okay? I don't know. 7-Eleven just seems to be the store you can go anywhere. You go to 7-Eleven in Lund, Sweden. You go to 7-Eleven in North Hollywood. Now, you go to 7-Eleven in Lund. It's a very nice established restaurant almost over there, okay? Here.
It's a 7-Eleven, Johnny.
Okay. All I can say is they take no pride. It was enough that my coffee is completely black, and they didn't have the powdered creamer, non-dairy creamer, because I'm lactose intolerant unless it's ice cream. You know what I'm saying?
Is there a creamer shortage along with the shortage of everything else out there right now?
No, some 7-Elevens just don't have it because they're dicks. I don't know what it is. But then the kicker was, I was like, okay, I need jewel pods. Can I get a box of those jewel pods? She's like, do you want the 3%? That's all I got. I'm like, you don't have the 5%? She's like, oh, I ran out.
What's that mean?
5% nicotine. So I got.
So they're weaker.
I wasn't going to get the 3%. It's like I'll just wait. So the moral of all this is, I said I was going to get more jewel pods. I didn't get more jewel pods, and on top of it, I get really annoyed that people who have their own businesses and they don't take pride in it. They don't take pride in their business.
I don't disagree with you. Go to another 7-Eleven.
I didn't have time.
Maybe they were just out. Maybe they were out of stock. How do you know that they don't take pride? Maybe they were out of stock of what you were trying to buy. I don't have your back on this one. I don't.
I think it's fair that I gave the woman an attitude about the creamer because see at 7-Eleven, their 7-Eleven like they have the sugar. It's in a white canister, and the non-dairy creamer is in a red canister.
But you just dump junk into your system, don't you?
I don't put sugar. I don't do the sugar. I only do the non-dairy.
I don't know. For whatever, that just seems like, I don't know, sawdust to me.
Well, probably is sawdust,
Yeah.
Anyway,
did I just annoy you? I just annoyed you.
Yeah, very much so.
Because I didn't agree with you.
No, that's not the. It wasn't the. It wasn't the not
exclusively?
agreeing with. No, it wasn't not agreeing with me. It was something else.
Sawdust comment.
Yeah, like you're like no. It was the what else are you putting into your body? Like Mr. like fucking health nut dickhead over here, Jesus Christ.
I'm sorry, dude. I mean,
it's cool.
Make fun of my bad internet connection.
We already did. We lost the whole show because of it. Well, not really.
Yeah.
We salvaged it pretty good. We salvaged it pretty good. And in all reality, It would have been too long to be one long one because it's like a 2-hour long conversation, you know? So
Yeah, initially I was super bummed, and then I started listening to the stuff we talked about, and I was like, well, this is really interesting to me. It'd be nice to talk even longer about this. Michael was kind enough to tell us, or to say he'd join us again today because of said technical issues. And now, instead of having one podcast, we're going to have two with an interesting topic. And I didn't really do a good job of explaining that right there. And words are hard sometimes.
I'm going to have to. I'm going to. Unlike you, I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah,
that didn't sound good.
Oh, okay. Let me send him a link. All right, we got Michael. Let's say hello. Let's say hello to our longtime friend, huh?
Yeah, this is neat. This is neat. Hey, Michael. we're back.
How are you guys doing today?
Good, man. Good. Thank you so much. I want to show you something. I just showed Johnny this. So my internet was out for the rest of the day, okay?
I called my God.
Him. I told him I was working. I didn't want to be like, you messed up my podcast. I was like, I was on Zoom call for work, and like, you got to send somebody out here to fix this. So the guy comes out, and he gives me this. Now, this is my internet source going from outside to inside my house. It's supposed to look like a orange extension cord, so obviously it's faded, but that silver there is just like exposed wire.
Wow.
The dude came in, he's like, I'm surprised your shit worked at all, dude. Like, you're lucky that it gave you even a little bit of internet.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. It works out because now we have we're doing like a 2-part of this podcast because we got a lot of stuff from the last one. So we'll do half this week and then we'll do the other half next week.
Cool.
If that's cool. If that's cool with you.
Yeah, I love it. That's better. That's way better.
Yeah, I agree because it was interesting stuff. And when we left off last time, which we'll refer to as part 1, we were just getting into kind of like the relationship between Chris Isaak and Jimmy. And
right.
I got to be honest, man, the further into the book I got, I just started getting anger towards Chris Isaak because it just seemed like there were these steps along the way where he was, in my opinion, I don't want you to dish dirt if you don't want to, but he just kind of seemed like he was out for himself.
Well, I think that, Chris Isaak always wanted to be a star, Mm-hmm. His mother just flat out said at one point, yeah, it's just a matter of time. They're going to have a hit. She was super supportive of Chris from when he was really young. And so she told me that at one point they were out, like they were somewhere where there was a guy that you could, I guess, pay to do a portrait of you, those sort of those things. Like sometimes you find them along a beach but anyway. And so the guy says to Chris Isaak, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Little boy, that type of thing. And he just totally serious says, I'm an artist. Like right now, I'm an artist, not when I grow up, right now. Yeah. That was how Chris Isaak was and is, very, very confident in himself. And he wanted to be a star. And he pretty much he told Eric Jacobson went and saw Silvertone perform in the spring of 1981. He was trying to find a new artist to work with, and he wanted someone really great. And people told him, this is the guy. So he goes and sees the show, and afterwards he talks to Isaak and says, let's get together for lunch. And there were a few different of these sort of meetings, and I know Jimmy was at least one of them, and maybe more. But anyway, at one of these, Jacobson says to him, well, if we're working, and there's, you need a lot of work on your vocals and, your band, there's a lot of work needs to be done with the band. But if we work together, and what if it comes to a time where some of the musicians in your band can't cut it in the studio? And Isaak says, if anyone gets in my way, they're gone, basically. His attitude was, I am going to become a star. And it wasn't like these are four friends or three friends in the beginning when first he formed a trio. It wasn't like it was like three friends who get together and form a band. This was like, Isaak came up to San Francisco, and this guy Mark Plummer, basically he becomes his manager, and Plummer says to him, well, who do you want in your band? And then Isaak says, well, I really think that drummer in the who was in the Dills and is in the Soul Rebels now, that's the guy that I really think would be the great drummer, and so on. It was like that, you know what I mean? So that was, that was where he was coming from. He wanted, the best musicians. And I mean, it was a partnership between him and Jimmy. Then when Chris Isaak was in a position where he basically had sort of the power in the group, at that point, he made changes. But I have to say that I mean, Eric Jacobson, and he's coming from, of course, a different place altogether, but he basically felt like, Chris was looking out for himself, and why shouldn't he be?
But here's where I would push back on that, maybe a little bit, just a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. You got to take care of yourself first, family first, and all that stuff. But it's the chemistry of things. You know what I mean? Like Eric comes in and he's into this. It was those guys together. It wasn't just Chris Isaak on his own.
Well, yeah, no, I know, but I mean, from Eric Jacobson's point of view, he saw Chris Isaak as a star. Like this guy has the potential to be a star. He looks great. He has charisma. He can hit all the notes, and so he's looking at it like, okay, if worse comes to worse, and it ends up I'm just working with Chris Isaak, that's fine. Now, because there was this creative chemistry between Jimmy Wilsey and Chris Isaak, that's why, I mean, they were able to work together really well. And I mean, Jimmy brought this incredible sound to these songs.
Did Chris try to emulate that sound after Jimmy wasn't around anymore? Did he try to get the same sound as Jimmy because it was that familiar sound or whatever? Like, did he try to keep that sound even when Jimmy wasn't in the picture anymore?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you listen to the San Francisco Days album, which is the fourth album, Jimmy played on half of that album, according to Eric Jacobson. So the other half, there were three different guitar players that were used to fill that out. I mean, it's interesting that it took three guitar players to do what
which just showed the chemistry. He's probably like, well, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right, because it wasn't the original thing.
Well, yeah. And I mean, according to Chris's current manager, and she wasn't there at the time. I'm pretty sure she wasn't actually there at the point when they fired Jimmy, but she was there during part of the next period. She said that Chris waited 3 years before hiring a permanent replacement for Jimmy. She says the reason for that was he was hoping Jimmy would clean up and be able to come back to the band. When Chris Isaak brought a permanent replacement in, he brought someone in who could copy what Jimmy did. Yeah. I mean, he didn't bring someone in who was, in my opinion, was creative in the way that Jimmy was creative. And I mean, Eric Jacobson said that as well, so it's not just me. That's just not my bias. I mean, I think most people who are familiar with the band while Jimmy was in it and then later would agree with that.
I have a question. This is my own trail of logic, so follow me here, and then I'd like to hear what you think about this. So Heart-Shaped World comes out. It's their third album. It has Wicked Game on it. They go on tour. Wicked Game eventually ends up becoming like this international hit. They're on tour. Jimmy has a girlfriend, Jennifer Rubin, who's an actress. They seem to be very happy. She's on tour with them. They're getting along. They get back and she breaks up with him. And then the record company wants another hit. And that's sort of when he becomes like disenchanted with it. he quit or he got fired. There was no like clear, you're fired, I quit thing.
Yeah.
There.
Now I'm pretty sure he got fired based on some conversations I had with people who would know after the book was all finished. In the next version of the book, that's going to be a slight change at that point, where I think I now have Pearl Gates says she's, pretty sure he was fired. I have some additional people now that I'm, bringing into that who say they were there the night that he had been fired. But I mean, at the same time, he was, I think, he was ready to split. I mean, that's certainly what he was saying to me. I mean, he was acting like he wanted to quit the band.
Because the record company's like, "Oh, we need another song," and he's like, "Well, I just did that for you. Like, what am I going to do it again and not get paid?" And then
it wasn't like that. It was like there was, Eric Jacobson was he had a production deal, and Jimmy and Chris were signed to Jacobson, and then there was this contract with Warner Brothers that was with Chris and Warner Brothers, but Jacobson was in the mix of that too because he had the production deal. So I mean, Eric was the one who was really dealing with Warner Brothers. And when Wicked Game became a hit, I mean, that's what they wanted, was to have another hit, and right. And Chris actually worked with this songwriter that Eric Jacobson had under contract, who had actually written Madonna's "Papa Don't Preach." And I'm right now, I'm not clear on the timing. That might have happened after this, but anyway, I'm just telling you, he was. So we're talking about a guy who wrote a huge hit, and this guy, this guy and Isaak were working together and came up with this song, "Can't Do a Thing to Stop Me," and they really thought that was going to be, they were going to have another hit with that one. And in my opinion, they should have. I don't really understand why they didn't have another hit with it, because it's a really, really great song. But they didn't.
Was that the video with the girlfriend in it that, Ryan, you were telling me that?
No, that's what I was sort of leading to that.
That's later. That's 95 after Jimmy's gone.
Ultimate weird move. Like, you have this period where, like, Chris is hoping Jimmy cleans up and comes back. He'd let him back in. Jimmy's kind of going down a dark way, and then Chris Isaak puts out a song called "Somebody's Crying" and casts Jimmy's ex-girlfriend Jennifer Rubin to be his, in the video, girlfriend, and they're like kissing and stuff. That's so weird to me, dude. Like,
I agree. I think it's completely bizarre, and like I mean, it's just like
that's a power move, is what that is.
I mean, I don't know. Okay,
it's weird shit.
I have no explanation for that. I mean, read into it what you want. I mean, in retrospect, maybe Jennifer Rubin has second thoughts about that. But I mean, she had broken up with Jimmy. Some years had gone by. Now here's, this rock star who wants to hire her to be have one of the co-starring role in this video. Yeah. And so. So she does it. There's
a lot of no respecting this guy at all around there. Like, I mean, like, if they had the breakup wasn't bad or anything like that. I mean, I don't know. It just seems weird. All of that.
It sounds like it was a friendly kind of situation. They were all friends on tour. She was friends with Chris's girlfriend, and it was years later. So maybe it was like in her mind, just being like, "Oh, I'll help my friend out." But it just to me personally, as I was reading, it was like, that's a slap in the face. If I've ever seen a slap in the face.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, he knew that Jimmy would really hurt Jimmy. I mean, he knew that. I mean, why did he do it?
Yeah.
At that point in time, why did he do it? I have no idea.
Think about this. Like, imagine being in a situation where, like, maybe you feel a little resentful at the fact that, like, you got screwed on, like, some publishing, because he probably did. He probably deserved a little bit more than what they gave him. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, it's sort of like he has this drug problem. He's, the career, everything's fucked. He's not in a good way. Now, granted, everybody makes their own bed. I get the concept, and it is what it is. I don't know. I mean, it goes like, I was going to bring out an example of we were talking before about Chris Isaak was a star and Jimmy was just one of the guys. And it made me think of the Tom Petty documentary when Jimmy Iovine was producing and Steve Lynch, the drummer, it was just like his tempos were all over this, that, and the other thing. So they actually brought in studio guys, and ultimately they went back to Stan Lynch because Stan Lynch it was his fingerprint in the music. Even though it was Tom Petty's band, Stan Lynch had his fingerprint.
Sure.
And so did Jimmy. And it's sort of like, it's just the fuck you ego stuff. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy. Listen, everybody has somebody could say something bad about anybody in the world. There's somebody, there's somebody out there who can say something bad about anybody. But, I don't know. It just shows that how much friends could they have ever been at any point, even if it was always just business from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, it was a creative relationship, Yeah. I mean, it was a making music relationship. I mean, that was where the magic happened when, those guys and working with Eric Jacobson. I mean, that combination resulted in, just some amazing recordings. In my opinion, after Jimmy was gone, that it was never the same. And he was absolutely integral to the sound and to the recordings. And that was what was, for me, the appeal of, whether it's Silvertone, whether it's Chris Isaak, it doesn't matter what you want to call it. The appeal was what's in those recordings, the way what Jimmy did worked with Isaac's songs and vocals. And once that wasn't there, I didn't care anymore. It just wasn't there. It was a different sound. And it wasn't a sound that I thought was particularly unique anymore.
Did he have any more hits?
No, that was the only real hit.
Whose suggestion was it to change it from Silvertone to just Chris's name?
Well,
and did that bother Jimmy at the time?
Well, what happened was Warner Brothers were concerned that Sears, which owned the Silvertone brand and had issued Silvertone guitars, and actually at one point in the past had a Silvertone record label, they weren't going to sign a band called Silvertone and put that band out with the name Silvertone because they thought they would get
sold at Sears.
They thought they'd get sued by Sears.
Right. How did it go to like just a solo name though? Like, I mean, it went from a band name being a band name, and because that makes a big difference when it seems like a band. Then Jimmy probably would have just gotten more recognition if it was a band and not just a solo guy.
Well, you have to remember at that point, Chris Isaak had control of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it was Chris and Jimmy and Eric when the deal with Warner Brothers happens. And Warner Brothers deal does not include Jimmy. He's not in the deal. He has a deal with Eric Jacobson. I mean, basically, they are both, Eric Jacobson has a production deal with Silvertone, and Silvertone now are those two guys. But their names were in his production deal. Warner Brothers decides to sign Chris Isaak. They do a deal with Chris Isaak so that later, when the production deal ends,
was that by design? Did they make it that way so they could leave Jimmy not part of that?
I would assume Warner Brothers felt that Chris Isaak was the star. He was the guy they wanted to be sure they had under contract. I mean, just to reiterate, what happened was Chris Isaak had contracts be signed by the four guys in the band in late '82. One of the guys wouldn't sign it, so he was out right then. At that point, Jimmy and the bass player Jamie, at that point, they signed these contracts. These contracts at that point said that Chris Isaak gets 40% and they each get 20%. But then when Chris Isaak fires Jamie, now there's just Chris Isaak and Jimmy. And so of the 100% of the portion that is supposed to go to Chris Isaak, Jacobson, Jimmy. Of that, 100%, 20% of it goes to Jacobson because he has a production deal. The remaining 80% gets split now. 20 goes to Jimmy, and there's 80% left over. And now, since there are no longer two other guys in the band who would each get 20, now 80% goes to Chris Isaak.
Oh, so he just absorbed that?
Yeah. And so, and when
Where the fuck is the love for Jimmy?
Okay. And then when they brought in the new guys, Kenny on drums, Raleigh on bass, they were salaried.
Yeah.
They were salaried. They were not, they were not participating in the payments, record royalties. So going forward then, for basically, for all the albums, it's now, well, not all the albums, but I mean, for the second album, for Heart-Shaped World, I mean, the split, and for what he played on San Francisco Days, the split is, Jimmy's getting 20% of the mechanicals, 20% from when a CD is sold or a cassette is sold, or, and that's just how it was. And he wasn't happy about that. I mean, he was bitter about it. It was the beginning that back in like 82, that was sort of the beginning of where, and then another thing that was a problem was when they were going to be songwriter partners, but according to Jimmy, he was offered 5% and he didn't feel that was fair. And so he didn't do that. And so that was another factor. And then when the song was in Wild at Heart, Jimmy expected to get, a significant amount of money, and he was upset when he wasn't getting the money. And basically it was like, well, Chris wrote the song.
What would have been different with, I mean, it was an instrumental version of Wicked Game that was in the movie, but what would have made that different payout wise if just being an instrumental?
Well, I think it's more like that's the first thing that happens where that this song becomes a huge hit, obviously. Yeah. Up until then, they didn't have any hits. There were no hits in the United States. That's when it actually matters. It doesn't, on a certain level, it doesn't matter if you don't sell any records. That doesn't matter what your percentage is because you're not getting anything. It's only when you're selling records that it's a big deal. So that's when it became a big deal. I mean, Jennifer Rubin basically said that, Jimmy expected things to be different, and they weren't different. And he was still in this same position of thinking that if he just tried harder, well, maybe that would cause things to change. Maybe that would make Chris would do something different, but it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. It sure doesn't.
It never works like that.
It does. Even to the point of I don't know how long the time frame was, but sorry, words are hard sometimes. There was a Jaguar commercial with Wicked Game song on it that was re-recorded.
Yeah, 2001. Yeah. That came out, and according to Jimmy's friend Bill Sankey, they were watching TV and this thing came on, and they knew instantly that it wasn't Jimmy anymore, and that for that the song, it had been re-recorded, and so what that meant was that Jimmy didn't get any money from that. It meant that Chris Isaak kept all the money. Eric Jacobson didn't get any money from that either because he didn't produce it.
So he was not working with Chris at that point in time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Listen, there's artists, right? There's artists and there's assholes, and I can go on the record for saying when it comes to the way he handles his business, it is what it is. But you're either cool about it or you're not, and he just seems to be all about him. Everything that I'm hearing, it's like all about him. And we were talking when we lost.
I just want to say one thing. It's not an unusual situation.
Oh, I know
that for someone's in a band and then it becomes really popular, right? And then the front guy leaves and does his solo thing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times when the front guy leaves and does his solo thing, it's not popular the way the band was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's just you know,
it's the fingerprint thing, you know.
We could even look at, I mean, when the Beatles broke up, right? I mean, it's like John Lennon made great records, and some of them were quite popular, and Paul McCartney made some great records. I liked his first solo album, actually. I thought was quite good. But even to, Paul McCartney was never as popular as the Beatles. John Lennon was never as popular as the Beatles. George Harrison, Ringo Starr, right? I mean, they just weren't.
I can see his view of things. Like the story goes that he would come with a verse chorus, some better than others, but he had a bunch of them. They did them in batches, and then like that one's good, we'll work on that one, and then like Jimmy would enhance it. So I could see him logically being like, well, I wrote it, and being true to that.
Right, and in fairness, you're a songwriter who doesn't. You're a what I write is mine kind of guy. I come from a different world, being a drummer, where I look at it, I'm like, hey, listen, everybody has a role. Jimmy had a role. He should have been more included. So I see you defending that side, and I understand.
I'm not defending that side. I'm just saying that I could see somebody that wrote the song saying, well, that was my song, and you enhanced it. But also, I would be able to acknowledge when there's a chemistry with somebody else that it brings out a better product.
What is the one thing in Wicked Game that everybody knows? It's Jimmy's effing guitar part. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
And I'm sure Jimmy was like, "That's awesome. You guys all love my guitar part, but I'm fucking hungry over here. Or I want to get more drugs and I can't even buy more drugs."
He wasn't hungry.
And, who knows? I mean, he was living on the street at one point. So I mean, all I'm saying is that.
But that's so much later. That's decades later. I mean. But the thing was, Jimmy was addicted to heroin, and he was addicted to heroin before Wicked Game happened. And so it's like, if you're addicted to drugs, then it's, you find a reason to use the drugs, and to use them a lot. So you can't blame those things for Jimmy being a drug addict. I certainly don't think that they, it's just
Ryan. The other day,
we can look. Okay, yeah.
Because I'm with you on this. I just want to feel the other day when it was Michael and I just on the phone because your internet went down. We were talking about all sorts of stuff, and
shit the bed.
When we were talking about stuff, but we got into a deeper conversation about addiction, and how Michael wants to actually, with the book, bring to light, how addiction runs deeper, and I think that's where Michael was going right here, which is great because it is something like that. He didn't just become a heroin addict; that was a deep rooted thing that,
Well, yeah. I mean, basically, one of the things is that addiction becomes it's sort of like you learn that this is how you deal with pain. It's a learned thing. And so, so there are all these factors that led into Jimmy becoming addicted to drugs, and Jimmy not ever really wanting to, to stop. I mean, he would stop and then he would start again, and it just happened over and over and over again.
It's a funny, I guess, trait because he seems like he was a charismatic guy. He was able to talk to girls. He was popular. People liked him and they wanted to be around him. But then on the flip side, he didn't have like the communication to stand up for himself in like his business interactions.
I think this goes back to his childhood, and I mean, it was a military family, and he was the youngest kid, and it was like his dad set the tone for how things were supposed to be in the Wilsey household. And my understanding is that neither his mother nor his father were really supportive of him, being a musician or being an artist. He talked in a letter to to his girlfriend Claudia Summers about the fact that they didn't support him, and that really he felt like it was his brother, where he had kind of gotten some support. I think did I speak about this with you about his first girlfriend, Claudia Summers, and the relationship that they had? Because, she said that there were times when she treated Jimmy really badly,
You did talk to him about that.
And he put up with it. He put up with it. And it was kind of like, I thought his relationship with Chris Isaak was kind of like that as well. For a long time, he put up with things that he didn't like, but he put up with them, and he put up with it because, I guess I would think that making the music, the music was so great, and doing that meant so much, just like his girlfriend. He loved his girlfriend so much that, he was willing to put up with the stuff so that she wouldn't leave him, and he was willing to put up with the stuff so that he could keep working with Chris Isaak,
Yeah. We did talk about that, and I brought up that part of that book I was talking to you about, where in that book it had talked about people will take abuse, because he's got stuff going on from childhood. So people who take abuse more than they should, usually the case in that scenario is they beat themselves up really bad, and people don't walk away from that other person until that other person's beating them up more than they beat themselves up. That's just another way to look at it.
Interesting.
It's also complicated because, Jimmy was presenting to the world forever that he wouldn't talk about why he stopped working with Chris Isaak, because and he had the excuse that he was under contract not to talk about it. So, and he was under contract not to talk about it, but it was a nice excuse for him, because he could just say, I can't talk about it.
Do you think any of that would be because he would have to go back and talk to them? And what if he went back and talked to them? They were like, no, we don't want you to come back. Like, do you think that the fear of being rejected by them, if he went to them and even asked them, could have had something to do with it?
Chris Isaak said in an interview, I believe it was in, was it 93? I think it's 93. It's in the book. It's right around then. He said in an interview that he was hoping that Jimmy would be back and that he'd be working with Jimmy again. That was how he presented it to the public, at that point in time. My impression was that he was open to something, and maybe if Jimmy had been open to it, they could have gotten together and worked on a song together.
Did the weird video with the ex-girlfriend come before or after this time period?
By then, the video has happened by then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All sorts of things probably went into him being like, fucking,
it's
I don't
a lot
want
of
to deal
stuff.
with this.
It's a lot of stuff. He's a drug addict, so there's a overwhelmingly large problem. And then also, he just seems like kind of like been there, done that. Like anytime somebody was like, well, you should do this, or like he had that conversation he had on the phone with Roland Sally where he was like, yeah, I'm basically like, I have a job. This is my job, music, and Jimmy didn't seem like he wanted a job. He seemed like he wanted to create as an artist.
Raleigh, said that, they were going to be appearing up here at this thing. It's this big festival that happens up here. Oh God, what's that thing called? Hardly Strictly Bluegrass. It's a huge festival that would happen every year. It's had some problems because of with COVID, like a lot of live events have. But up until COVID, it was this huge festival in Golden Gate Park, free, every year. And there would be like multiple stages in Golden Gate Park. And it was just an incredible thing. So anyway, did
the city pay for that? Like, how would they pay the artist?
No, that was paid for by a guy who had made a lot of money in, in software, I think, or, some in the tech world. He'd made a huge amount of money. And so he was spending his own money every year to put this thing on, year after year after year. And so this was in 2016, and Jimmy was invited he's because he was now in the fall of 2016, he was living in the Bay Area again. And so he was invited to come guest, but he didn't do it. And of course, then he got drugs. He got all messed up with drugs again at that point anyway. And then he wasn't in the Bay Area anymore. But there were opportunities if he had wanted to take them, but he didn't.
Just littered with a bad habit, or unfortunately, that addiction took him down,
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw Jimmy?
Well, the last time I saw him was in late 92, early 93. I talked to Jimmy on the phone in 98, I think, after he had formed the Mysteries. I talked to Jimmy on the phone. I was editor-in-chief at that point at a company called SonicNet, which was a music news and music videos and interviews and all. I mean, it was everything you could possibly do at the time related to music. And then I was also running the editorial division of it. And anyway, so I assigned one of my writers who was in Los Angeles to interview Jimmy and write a story about this new band, The Mysteries, that he had formed, and then to also review their first show. And so those pieces ran, originally it ran at SonicNet, and then later MTV bought SonicNet. So those two pieces, you can find them online if you do a search for Jimmy Wilsey and The Mysteries. They should both, come up. But anyway, so I talked to Jimmy at that point in time and said, hey, we'll try to give you some publicity here to try to get some attention to your new band. And he sounded fine at that point. But of course, Jimmy was always really good at sounding fine. I mean, that was the thing. He was very good at hiding his drug problems. And then I think I talked to him also when El Dorado came out, because I know I got a copy of El Dorado. I think he sent me one, and that was later. That was
it was like 08
2008 was when that came out. And then I had just the most brief Facebook Messenger exchanges with Jimmy in June and September of 2018. I wanted to interview him briefly for a story that I was writing, an essay about the sort of lasting impact of the Mabuhay Gardens. Jimmy was at the Mabuhay Gardens all the time back in the late 70s. And so I thought he would be a great person to talk to about it. But I sent him this message, and he sends me a emoji, like thumbs up emoji kind of thing. But it's like, well, Jimmy, I'm thinking, Jimmy, that doesn't cut it. I need a phone number. I need to talk to you on the phone. And then I didn't hear from him again until September. And at that point, he's, saying it's this, some jive about, well, I lost my phone, or, it was one of these things that didn't make any sense. And I was like, something's weird here, but I didn't think about it that much at that point. It'd been a long time, and, and then 6 months later that's when it just hit me so much when I read that he had died.
I have an interesting question. Or at least I think it is. So when he was living outside the woman's house who makes those pedals, or did, Ryan, you were explaining.
He was sleeping on her sidewalk.
Right. Did he seek that out, or was that by, I don't believe in coincidence, but by what, or was it by coincidence?
As far as I know, it was a total coincidence. I mean, I don't know that he would have any reason to know where she lived, or she didn't live there. It was a building that she owned. I mean, and it wasn't the building where she had her base of operations. It was some other building that she owned, and
just
she
like a random building
that she owned.
Yeah.
And so I know it's just a weird.
In a weird way, it was his final, he was good at getting help from women, and that was his final favor because she was the one that called the ambulance for him.
Well, yeah, and she let him, once she knew who he was, then she let him, if that's where he wanted to stay, she let him stay there. She didn't try to get him to leave anymore. And like she said, she brought some food out to him.
Is that how they met? Was her trying to get rid of him? Like get off the property?
Yeah.
That's how they met?
Yeah.
And how'd she figure out who he was?
Well, basically she finds this guy, he's like homeless bum. And he's, there's all his stuff and sort of a mess and cardboard where he's, sleeping on a piece of cardboard. And she tells him to leave and you got to go somewhere else. You can't, this is my property. You can't sleep here. And unlike, she said, every other homeless person that she had dealt with, he completely cleaned up after himself. And she was very surprised at that. And then she found him there another day. And that was when he says to her, "You're Ivana Manley, right?" And then he says the name of this piece of equipment that her company, this high-end audio equipment that her company made. And and he says, he says, Gear Slut, you're on Gear Slut. And
is that a website?
Gear Slut is like a forum, an online web forum for people who are into high-end audio gear. And, that's where they congregate and ask questions and go
he
back
just
and forth.
He just recognized her.
And so he recognized her.
Wow.
Because she was there and he
What are
was
the
there
odds of
on
this? What are the odds of this shit happening?
And so when he says that, she's just thinking, this is weird. How is it that this homeless guy knows about Gear Slut? So she says, well, who are you? And he says, I'm Jimmy Wilsey. And that name does not ring a bell for her. But she goes home and looks it up, or goes, wherever her computer is and looks it up on Google and sees that he used to play with Chris Isaak. And so she is friends with Chris Isaak's engineer, who engineers his records.
There's no such thing as a coincidence. I'm telling you, all of this was supposed to happen.
And so she calls him up and she says, "Hey, did you know Jimmy he's homeless and he's, and the guy says, oh, he must be on that stuff again," meaning heroin. And so they were familiar with, his problem, obviously. So then now that she knows kind of who he is, then she lets him stay there and she, will give him food sometimes, bring him some tea. But at the same time, she's pretty wary because she knows he's a drug addict and she doesn't, nobody, you never want to trust, someone who's using heroin. You can't.
Yeah, you can't. Just you can't.
Yeah. But
that's a story.
That's
man.
a weird part of the story. I mean, there's a lot of weird parts to the story. I mean,
like that. That's just something like I am definitely a true believer if everything happens for a reason. That like just the fact that she's friends with Chris Isaak's engineer, like it just like the whole that he recognized her. Like, what are the odds that he would know what this woman even looked like? Like it's just. Yeah. It's all just, and that she owned a random fucking building, some random building she owned. Just weird.
Yeah, and all of it was what, maybe 2 months before he died.
Yeah,
Michael, I appreciate you taking the time to talk not only about Jimmy but about yourself as well, and share all your life with us. It's been amazing, and I'll find you on the Facebook. We'll have to be friends officially.
Cool.
Yeah,
for sure, for sure. Awesome, man.
Great. And I have this other book coming out, at the end of the year in November, which is,
What's that about?
It's a collection. It's called Addicted to Noise: The Music Writings of Michael Goldberg. It's coming out on
cool.
Backbeat Books, and that book collects interviews and profiles and essays that I've done over the past 45 plus years. And there's in that book are, profile of Prince when I hung out with Prince, and I mean stories about interviews with Neil Young.
We might have to have him come on for a third week in a row because I want to hear about the Prince thing.
I mean, there's
you did 3 articles on Michael Jackson. Did I read that? somewhere?
Yeah, there's a Michael Jackson story when I went up to Neverland Ranch. That story is in the book, and my profile interview with John Lee Hooker and Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Robbie Robertson of the band, and
so hold up. We just like
Johnny's going to try to get into these stories now.
Well, hold on a second. You just grazed over the fact that you went to Neverland.
Hold on a second. In November, we could do another show. We could talk about
100%.
100%.
I love it.
If you want to do it.
I love it. Oh, definitely.
But
I don't know if I can wait till November.
I'm very proud of that book too. I mean,
interesting.
It's really cool. I'm just kind of we're just kind of going over the proofs of it now, but it's a cool book. It's a 400-page book. It also has a lot of my photographs in it.
Awesome.
And it's cool.
Well, till then.
Yeah, we're definitely doing that. I mean,
Great.
I'm gonna hold you to it. Trust me.
Cool.
Awesome. Great, Michael. Well, thank you so much, brother. We appreciate it.
All right.
Awesome, Michael.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you soon, man.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Take care.
All right. So Ryan Harris, that was great. That was an amazing.
I
that
think
was just amazing. Now I got to wait till
we're
November.
venturing into the world of journalism, dude. We're venturing into the world of journalism.
I got to say that.
Or reading.
But that was amazing. And Michael, thanks again. And everybody who have listened to the last 2 weeks, I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. So make sure you
get the book.
Go get the book. Ryan, title again. Give the whole thing uninterrupted.
It's called Wicked Game: The True Story of Guitarist James Calvin Wilsey.
There you go.
And
make sure you go, you like, subscribe, and report as usual. Whateverbuddy.com.
Some of the proceeds are going to the guy's son.
Yeah, that is not of our podcast, but of the book. Because
Johnny.
Johnny. Yeah, well, you see, it was right after I said like, subscribe, and report. You're like,
Yeah.
all the proceeds go to his kid. It's like, not mine. With that being said, everybody, thank you very much. We'll see you next week on the Whatever Buddy podcast.
See you next time.